Well, Dennis, prescient column today, you wrote that it was all over for Michael McCormack. It was, of course, by lunchtime. It's a much more independent-minded deputy, Nationals leader there, soon to be deputy tomorrow. He'll be sworn in, Barnaby Joyce. So what can we expect this time round?
Well, I think that the first thing that we can expect is that Barnaby Joyce and Scott Morrison will actually work quite closely together, professionally and pragmatically. There is no doubt that Scott Morrison and Michael McCormack were friends. They got on well, and there was a preference for Scott Morrison as for Michael McCormack as Deputy Prime Minister. There was also a history of tension between Barnaby Joyce and Scott Morrison. But within half an hour of Barnaby Joyce becoming the new Nationals leader and not yet Deputy Prime Minister, there was a long conversation between Barnaby Joyce and Scott Morrison via virtually, where they discussed the political strategies ahead. It was a question of what's happened has happened, what's in front. I think that the political and professional and pragmatic drive of both Barnaby Joyce and Scott Morrison will come to bear on winning the next election. I think that they have been helped enormously by Michael McCormack's personal demeanour today. He acted with great grace. He acted with the help and the interests of the coalition in mind, and there was no displays of ill discipline, revenge or outrage that we've seen from others who have lost their jobs. I think that this has been a very seamless transition, given the shock, the surprise and the speed with which it took place. But I think that the way Michael McCormack has behaved today will actually help his successor, Barnaby Joyce and Scott Morrison, work together. I think there's a lot of hype out there at the moment about what impact Barnaby Joyce's return as Deputy Prime Minister is going to have, and I think that a lot of people are not really looking at the reality of the advantages of Barnaby Joyce returning as Deputy Prime Minister, particularly in the regional areas of New South Wales, the Hunter Valley and regional Queensland. I think there's a big plus there for the government overall with Barnaby Joyce's return.
Yeah, look, you are an exception to your colleagues in the Canberra gallery, but most of them have got the memories of a goldfish. So they'll be assessing Barnaby Joyce upon his departure, not how effective he was in opposition. I worked very closely with him, how effective he was as a minister in the Abbott government, and then obviously later became a DPM under Malcolm Turnbull. So if you go back to then, a guided missile, he can be a very effective guided missile. Of course, that missile can go off course, and that will be the challenge for the Prime Minister. Two big egos there, the two of them, Scott Morrison and Barnaby Joyce, Dennis. I want to pick up your point, though, about Michael McCormack. I don't think people at home should underestimate how tough that would be. He's lost the job, the top job. He still fronted question time today. He still stood there, defended the government, spoke well about his own crowd. That takes a lot of guts to do that, and I think that will be how he will be remembered, I think, as a very honourable man. Joyce moving today, did he think that perhaps there was an early election coming, and he thought that this, midwinter break was the last opportunity he'd have to seize the leadership in case there was an October or November election? What was the motivation, do you think, behind today being the day they moved?
Well, I think that the prospect of an election, whether it's an early election later this year or early next year, would have been a motive in Barnaby Joyce's decision to go when he went. I think probably the main reason was that after 12 months since the last challenge, Barnaby Joyce realised he had the numbers, that he actually had the numbers in that small 21-member National Party room, and there was no point in holding back or delaying in moving. And it is clear he had the numbers. It was clear on the weekend that despite some spin and some claims that, oh yes, it was all going to blow away and there was just going to be a clear the air vote, and as well, Michael McCormack warning some of his colleagues that, they should be careful about what they did. I think that all played into the moment that we saw this morning. I think there was also perhaps a little bit of a warning about the factionalism in the National Party with the failure of former leader John Anderson to be pre-selected for the Senate in New South Wales. All of these things played in. But I think overall, their motive for removing Michael McCormack was to get a better performance out of the Nationals in Queensland and in regional New South Wales. That was the political reason for it. I think the timing was simply numbers, which, as John Howard always points out, is the iron rule in politics.